Hello, Montana. Hello, world. This is Chris Hislop from the Montana World Affairs Council with another Connect Montana. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. It's an amazing week this week. If you weren't able to join on Monday and Tuesday, we had Mayor John Engen Monday and Dr. Udo Fluck yesterday, Tuesday, talking about the international aspects of Missoula. So that's the theme this week. If you have any other ideas for themes that you'd like to see on this show, drop me a line at info@montanaworldaffairs.org. If you want to check out the shows that we've had so far, we just passed 1,000 participants, by the way, in our Connect Montana series. That's on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook, so you can have a look at those if you missed them. But now on to an extraordinary person, a fellow Missoulian. Fernanda Menna Barreto Krum is from Santa Maria, Brazil. She's a trauma psychologist and social entrepreneur. She's worked in healing processes with victims of war and torture and trained local counselors in multiple emergency zones throughout the world. In 2015, she helped co-found Imagine Nation Brewing Co in Missoula. It's the country's first combination of microbrewery and Center for Community Transformation. Fernanda, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for participating in our show. Maybe let me just kick off by asking you a little bit of your story. How did you get here? What are you doing here? And why are you still here? Over to you, Fernanda.
Thank you so much, Chris. Good morning, everybody. It just makes me tear up a little bit seeing like some familiar faces, and so and this is the way I am. So anyway, let's start. I arrived in Montana because of a gentleman that I met in Romania, and his name is Robert Rivers, my husband. He's from Helena, Montana. So I first came here to visit and meet his family and friends. And one of the place that I actually landed was Missoula, Montana. And that has a little bit to do with our subject today, because we spent 6 months here when we were between jobs internationally. And I met a lot of Brazilians. I met a lot of other people from other different other countries. And I was really impressed with Missoula. And I was like, oh, this is nice. There's some diversity here. There's some, international people that I can connect with, that I don't feel very alone or different, let's say. So yeah, I came here because of family. So
no better. Absolutely. So Fernanda, can you talk a little bit, please, let our viewers know about what keeps you here? What we're focusing on this week is the international aspects of Missoula City and our community. There are many and they're various. We've had a really interesting talk with the mayor and Dr. Fluck yesterday. But from your perspective, can you talk a little bit about our city and our community, and what you, as somebody born outside of the United States, how do you see those international aspects of our city? Where do you see them? How do they come out?
Right. I want to apologize that I was not able to be online for the two other talks that we had on Monday and Tuesday. And I'm looking forward to, watch them later, and hopefully I can beat it tomorrow. But I'm sorry if I'm going to repeat some of the things that the mayor and Dr. Udo have brought. But what I can share is, so I'm here because we decided to open a microbrewery and a Center for Community Transformation in this town, with the idea that it was the best place in Montana for the model that we proposed, because the idea was to use the space to connect people and bring people together to work on social change issues. Missoula has several nonprofits working in a lot of different things that are important for the community. And that was the reason why we opened here. So that's another thing that can be added to the idea of some diversity and some open minded populations and groups of people that would be, interested in collaborating with us when we open the business. I think when I started thinking about Missoula as an international city, I kind of felt like, is it really international? But I think that if we really think about the size and the place where Missoula is in the planet, we can truly say that it is in some level. We are very remote, kind of removed from the center of the world, let's say Montana. And that's a beauty that we have here because of the nature and not a lot of people around. But I think we are, if we think in that way. And but then I reflected on what is the definition of international, right? So to me, two main things are very important when we talk about it. That there's two main aspects. There's a lot of other ones, but diversity and connection are the two main that comes to me as the core of something or somewhere being international. I don't really personally think that Missoula is very strong in diversity, but at the same time, what are we comparing with, right? So if we think about the university international programs and the refugee program of bringing and settling refugees here, we can really agree that there are some diversity in our town, more than if we compare with other towns in Montana and in other places in the country. So, but then we have the other part of the equation, that is the connection. And to me, a population can be called to be international when they have the real connection with the world. And what I mean about real connection is like being exposed through experiences, through direct contact with people from other cultures and other habits in other countries, right? So in part, I think we have witnessed several situations where that happened. And Chris, please tell me if I am my time. So we had several, but I mean several, like around 300 volunteers that we know that have been involved since the beginning when Soft Landing Missoula started their refugee program to bring the families here to Missoula. And that compared with the population of Missoula might not be a lot, but I mean, it is a lot of people really that wanted to help and connect with these families. One really good example of that was we had every time that we had an event at the brewery that Soft Landing was hosting, we were packed because people they would come together and to support and to find ways of helping more those families. So that to me is connection. And that's a good example of how Missoula interact and get together, in that sense. But I think that that's one layer, of connection. That is that day-to-day kind of interaction that we have with different people. I think when we are really, the other layer that to me is important and that I think solidifies being international and connected is when we are truly embedded in the habits and behaviors of people from other cultures and that are unique to their cultures, that are unique to their way of seeing the world and being in the world. That is different from ours, right? And that it's diverse. Can we say diverse from us? So it is something that it's from that outside that we are not used to. A great example to me was when Kamoon food truck started working with us in our parking lot, and they would, come inside of the brewery and talk to our staff and like want to chat and ask how you're doing, and you say, we're doing well, how about you? And they smile and just like stare at you, and just then like talk a little bit more. And they would come and like all of a sudden just bring food to you, and then the next day they bring food again to you, and the next day they bring food again to you. And our staff just looked at me and Robert and just like, they're so gentle and they are so generous. And they said that with such a surprise that it's just not, they are not used to that. And like it was something different, you know. So that's what I mean about starting to being exposed on a daily basis to that type of behavior that we are not used to. So that starts to bringing us to this different level of being international, right? And the last example I want to give on that part is one day, it was around, it was 2016, it was during the presidential election year, and I was talking to someone at the brewery, and we were talking about that, of course, and that person, I was mentioning that my family and friends in Brazil were, you know, like watching the news and were concerned and were following what was going on in the US. And that person looked at me and said, "Is like, really? But why?" And I'm like, well, because what happens in the US and the economy and the politics that the things that happen here and the choices that this country will make, it will affect the whole world, and it affects them there. And that person at that moment just kind of like clicked, and it's like, wow, I never thought that what we do here can affect other people everywhere else. And that to a lot of us, that's a very simple thing, or like very you know, oh, of course it is, but there's still a lot of people that don't think that way or don't connect, right? It just needs a little bit of that exposure to talking to someone from outside to realize that we are all connected, and that the things affect, you know, what we do here affect the other people on the other side of the world, and vice versa. So I think those were the examples I wanted to give to kind of you know, bring that representation of what I've experienced in Missoula, and in what levels I think that Missoula is international, but in what levels that people are still waking up to that kind of level of connection that I think being international means.
Fernanda, that's a absolutely fascinating perspective. One thing that, from your example with the Cameroon food truck, it strikes me as kind of at the individual level. I mean, we often talk about our city and our community, but the importance of the individual connections and what that means. We did have Dr. Fluck yesterday made some very interesting points on this about the fabric of our community and how it's strengthened through this kind of understanding of different culture and accepting of other people. And it starts, frankly, at I guess, at the individual level. I wonder, Fernanda, if you could speak just briefly on, as a small business owner, but you know, for those who don't know Imagine Nation Brewing Company, it's far more than a brewing company. It is a center for community transformation that's involved heavily in many aspects of the community. But focusing just a moment on the business side of things, could you describe why is this kind of connection, as you say, important for business?
I need to plug my computer. It's just terrible. So why this is important for business? Well, I think, you know, I do believe that we are in times that if businesses are not touching the social responsibility that we have as citizens and as part of the economy, then I don't think we're doing the right job as business. That's my personal opinion, and that's one of the biggest reasons why we chose to make the model that we did. We would not be just selling beer for the sake of selling beer. So I think when we know that, and then we can build and start and implement in everyday relationship and in everyday transaction that we have with someone, with our customers, we can introduce something that it's more than just selling that product that we have, right, offered. Is we connect, we look at that person as a person and not only as someone that is bringing us paying something, taking something away. And to be honest with you, this is a feedback that we hear several times at the brewery. Our staff, we hear even outside when we talk about and we mentioned that we are part of Imagine Nation Brewing, is like, I feel at home there. I feel that I can get there and that people connect with me authentically and in a way that is different than if I would go to somewhere else. And it's not about comparing. It's just about that's something that I know that we have implemented, and it's real. And I think, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Chris, but that's what comes to my mind. That's what businesses can do and could offer to all of us if we have that in mind.
It's a really interesting counterpoint, Fernanda. We've had a lot of people on this show, not the least of which was the Consul General of Ireland, come in and talk to us about business connections, international business connections. And our friends from the Montana World Trade Center joined us to understand better why is it important that our community and our city have these international connections that bring import and export. But it's a very interesting perspective that you bring about the importance of international perspective within our community and how it affects the businesses here. So I think that's fascinating. We're getting lots of questions, Fernanda, so I'd like to go to some of the chat room questions while we have some time to go. The first one, I'll preface this. Fernanda, you mentioned some challenges to go for diversity in our community. So we've heard your opinion there, but I think this question is asking you to go one step deeper. Can you describe the greatest challenges that face Missoula in diversity, equity, and inclusion? And let me add my bit. I'd like to hear from you what you think some solutions might be to those challenges. Over to you.
Well, that's hard. I think, it's when I was talking about the example of the refugees and the volunteers that got together to help, there's another side of it that is, I think, and it feels that way, that I don't see the refugee families still very integrated in the society inside of Missoula in some levels. And there's a lot of sides of it. It's not that the community is not accepting, and it's not that they are not feeling comfortable. I think there's a natural, behavior of like gathering in your own culture. It's especially that they miss family and they miss their own country. So being together helps that. But I think we could do better in really truly integrating those families as Missoulians, as normal people. How that can happen, I think a lot, it has to be part of from how we receive them. And I'm saying we because I don't know, I feel like I'm in this side, even if I am not from from Missoula. And in one way is, for example, if we could, like have more of social like time with them. And now with the social distancing, that's another situation. But let's say, I remember that Wissam and Amar from the commune again invited us to go to their house to have dinner with them. And like, that's a way of including them in their own, in our own society. So like, I think those are things that we could have, or we have. So for example, we had events at the brewery, and there was one of them that they were all there and they were part of it, and they did a beautiful presentation, but there were some other ones that they were not there. How can we include them in events that have to do with their own well-being, and to help and support that population? I know Soft Landing has been doing a lot of like soccer games in the summer, and including the people, mixing the communities. But I think we should start thinking more creatively about how we can socialize together as peers, as the same, right? I don't know.
No, that's a really interesting insight. So let me kind of follow up on that one, Fernanda, and ask you a question that I'm asking everybody this week. You mentioned the refugees that are in the community here in Missoula and around the state. But in addition to that, Montana has a 2% foreign-born population right now, albeit those are typically Canadians, Mexicans, or Germans. They lead the pack. But there is an emerging diversity in our communities across the state, particularly here in Missoula. You mentioned a little bit earlier about what this means as a private business owner and for Imagine Nation Brewing. Let me ask you this one though, Fernanda, very broadly speaking, not simply refugees, but just broadly speaking on an international perspective. Why does it matter? In your opinion, who really cares about this? Why would this make any difference in our lives here in Missoula and in Montana?
Right. I think that's really one of the most important part of this conversation, to be honest. And when I reflect about that, Chris, to me, it matters because that's the only way that we can learn that there are other ways of thinking, other ways of behaving, other ways of seeing the world. I didn't understand a lot of that until I was 30 years old and I left my own country to go travel and work with other cultures and being and living in other cultures. So we can get caught on, this is the way, this is where I grew up, this is how things are, and this is how those are the social rules that we follow, this is what we believe it's right. So if we are not exposed to different cultures and ways of just how you were raised, right? And that means how you eat and how you talk and share your emotions, or how you I don't know, like anything that that defines us as human beings. If you don't meet someone from this other way of doing all of that, we don't expand as human beings. I think to grow and expand our own consciousness, and in this idea that there are different ways of being in the world, and they are not necessarily wrong or right, it's just different, and be able to respect that and be okay with it, and learn some new things. Learn that you can eat with your hands, and learn that you can be loud and be okay with that. I think that's beautiful. I think it's so beautiful. um what else did I put it here? Yeah, I think those are learning. It's like a child. Like when we learn new things, like the world expands inside of our minds. Like, wow, I this is possible. And I think it just makes us more whole if we start seeing that other things are possible, right?
Fernanda, that's a wonderful thought, and for me, one of the best parts about this show is hearing people answer that question: the so what? Like, why does this matter? Thank you so much for that. Now, I'm sorry to the participants who've sent in their questions that I won't be able to ask you because we're running out of time. So, Fernanda, I'm going to come back to you for any last words.
I would say that one of the best things I've done in my life was to get out of my country and go meet other people in other parts of the world. I love my country. I go back there and I love where I'm from, but there's so much more out there. And we don't really need to go too far to meet other people from other places. They have a lot of other new things to share with us and to teach us, and that we can teach them too. So I would encourage everybody to expand their world by connecting with the outside. And the last one is, if you really have questions and if you want to talk, please connect with me. It's easy to find me. Fernanda at imaginationbrewing.com. It's easy to find me. It's Missoula, Montana, like we're talking about. So we are right around the corner. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity, Chris.
Hey, Fernanda, when will we be able to go to Imagination Brewing and taste a beer?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, so we are reassessing the situation this week and next week. And our goal is June, beginning of June, to reopen the outside only. We started building shield masks again. Like maybe some of you know that we were involved in that project. And that's going to be going for probably 3 more weeks, 3 or 5, depending on the orders. So we are using the inside for the community aspect of our business, which we cannot not have that. And only serving beer is not the main goal. But we are working on the outside to be able to have everybody and receive people that we know that are anxious to enjoy the beer and the space and the atmosphere. So let's shoot for June and let's hope for it.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. All the best on that. And Fernanda, thank you so much again for joining us, for sharing your perspective on Missoula International. Again, if you missed Monday and Tuesday shows, check them out on Facebook or on YouTube. And if you have any other ideas for shows like this, let me know at info@montanaworldaffairs.org. We're not finished this week, though. We've got another show tomorrow morning at 9:30. Marja Unkuri Chowdhury, who's the Associate Director of the Global Engagement Office at the University of Montana, will join us also to give her perspective on the international aspects of our city and community. So we're kind of peeling the onion every day to see, what is it about this community, this city, and this place? What are the international aspects? What does it mean to us? So thank you again, everybody, for joining. I hope to see you tomorrow. Until then, be well. Bye-bye.